We're going to get this afternoon started in the innovation room with our panel. Let's see. This one is Transforming City Operations with Data and AI. I'm going to ask you to help me introduce our presenter and moderator, Ms. Jennifer Holmes.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be with you all today. I'm actually going to have the panel come on up here and we'll introduce everybody. Although I'm going to tell you the opposite since I have this microphone. I'm going to sit here, which is not what I said I was going to do. All right, as we get seated here, I'm excited to be with you today. I'm Jennifer Holmes from Accenture. I'm our public service global lead for cities, transportation, and infrastructure. And today, I've got with me some good folks to talk about this topic. I'm joined by Doug Priest, who's the public transportation and urban infrastructure lead for Microsoft. I've got Mandy Bishop with us, who's the president and CEO of Forward Momentum Ohio, and Becca Mason, who's the assistant commissioner for the New York City Fire Department. And disclaimer, we have to say that the opinions expressed by Becca are her own and not necessarily those that represent the fire department. So now that we've got that out of the way. It's another conversation about AI. Do we need another conversation about AI? I think so, because I'm excited to be with you today to talk about the immediate operational impact that AI is making in cities. This isn't something that we're hypothetically talking about, and we're going to be tactical today to talk about examples in cities where they are implementing AI, they're using their data to make a real impact, both in the productivity savings that their employees are experiencing and also in the benefits that the public is seeing. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the challenges to get to that point, both from a data perspective and then also from an organizational and people readiness. At the end of the day, it's still people that are involved with AI. But I just want to start by saying that I think what makes this technology different than the technology kind of revolutions we've had in the past is the accessibility. The challenges that we're facing in cities are the same that we've had. The resources are getting more constrained. The expectations of our citizens and people are increasing. And yet, we don't have to wait for someone else who knows how to code something to figure out how we can do this better. We, every single person in the organization, has the ability to interact and engage with AI to make a difference, to save time, to get more productive, to do more with less. And so that's what I think makes this so intriguing. And so I want to get started with our panel. So I am going to start actually with Doug. Can you help talk about, especially from a Microsoft perspective, you all are coming out with very tactical tools that you're putting in the hands of folks, very easy to use, using the same kind of tools we're used to using for decades, but how specifically is Microsoft's Copilot is just an example, transforming government workflows and productivity?
Yeah, so there's countless examples, as I know we've talked about, but there's a few examples that I want to share in particular. I think when we started having these kinds of conversations on stages like this a couple of years ago, there was a lot of talk about that sort of standard back office knowledge work, and it has made a tremendous impact in those areas right away. And now we're getting to the point where we're seeing more specific use cases that are transforming more complex workflows in government. So let's give a couple examples. One that comes to mind is work that we've done with the city of Burlington in Canada, a smaller city that has used Copilot Studio to build an assistant that has transformed their building permitting process, right? So it's a process that's been in place for a really long time. It takes quite a while to get a permit all the way through, as folks are probably in this room very well aware. And by adding an assistant to that process, they've been able to catch errors more quickly, been able to empower the workforce to do that administrative work more quickly, and they've been able to knock about a third of the time off it takes to get a building permit in their city. And they did that using Copilot Studio, as I mentioned. It only took them about 8 weeks to build that total. So it was a pretty quick build, and then the impact was felt right away. Another example where we're seeing a lot of this impact is in contact center, non-emergency contact centers in particular come to mind. And one example in Buckinghamshire in the UK, where they have rolled out Copilot to their contact center workers. They've done that for a segment of them. They've been running with that, and the productivity gains among the contact center workers who've access to the tool is about 10 to 20% higher than the contact center workers that didn't have access to that tool right away. So they're seeing really a huge efficiency gain, and those workers are able to spend more of their time focusing on kind of the higher value, more difficult to answer questions that are coming into them via that contact center, and some of that easier work has been offloaded to the Copilot, and getting people answers faster as well.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. And Becca, how could you share some of the emergency response and in your world of things of how you're seeing both either whether it's the fire department or internationally? I know you've got some really good examples of how AI is immediately making a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. At this point for emergency dispatch, we're at a point where I don't think we're going to see necessarily computer-aided dispatch anymore, but it's going to be AI-aided dispatch. So internationally, we're starting to see now many jurisdictions moving to this AI model. For instance, in Israel, there multiple jurisdictions actually, the entire National Emergency Medical Service is using an AI tool that allows them to better understand where they think the next incidents are going to occur. So they're able to bring in a bunch of different data, including things like population flows based on hour of day, and better understand where those medical emergencies are probably going to occur. And the smart part about that is you can start to have your dispatch aligned with where you think the incidents are going to happen. So preemptively putting your ambulances on the ground where you think you're going to see those incidents occur. At this point, really internationally, we're starting to see multiple jurisdictions moving towards AI-assisted dispatch. I think another instance, and this one is from Singapore, where you can use AI to better speak to the different cultural differences that you see within one place or another. So New York is very culturally diverse. In Singapore, they were able to, in the earlier days of AI, really start transcribing the local dialects using AI, which allowed dispatchers to better understand people even when there were things like background noise occurring, or if they had a particular accent with how they were speaking to the dispatcher. So that helped the dispatchers collect more information more quickly and really get to what is the necessity of that call at that time.
I love that example of, again, being able, you still have that human involved, and it's just allowing them to do improve the quality and the speed in which they're able to do their core work. Mandy, you work with a lot of transit organizations, so I'd love for you to share some of what you're seeing transit organizations thinking about how AI applies from an efficiency perspective in their world.
Sure. So just for a little bit of context, my company's often hired to be an IT project manager. It could be everything from identification of the problem and aligning solutions with that problem to just an organization has already chosen a technology to implement, and I'm coming in to help be their IT project manager. A lot of what I see across the board is that transit agencies are starting to want to really access their data. They want to make things more operationally efficient, specifically in route planning and route optimization, schedule optimization. They're also looking at AI from transit signal priority and really making sure they're getting better on-time performance. And so we're seeing these tools being deployed to make traditional transportation planning activities be more efficient and be able to, AI can really provide those insights that you can't see as a human. It also allows you to really use real-time information and data that wasn't just done at the close of the month or the close of the quarter. It's allowing you to tap any real-time data that you have, like from your CAD AVL, from your automated passenger counters, and bring that into your system to allow it to really optimize that route planning. And it might even be able to tell you that instead of doing a fixed route bus service, you'd be better served here with on-demand, where you're really responding to a lower volume. And so transit operations are starting to be revolutionized in that space. One of the things that I want to highlight, though, we're seeing this in places like Columbus, Ohio, where they're leveraging Hayden AI technology to really improve, predict, and get planned for better transit operations for a $10 billion program for 8 new bus rapid transit lines that are coming here in the next 7 to 10 years. But the smaller systems that can really benefit from AI because they have less people, less money, and as we are seeing cuts at the federal level are going to be entering a period of austerity, they can really benefit from these tools if they can get their data governance in, get more accessibility, get more validation, and really transform their operations and run leaner and meaner. And we're starting to see that interest, but there's some of these smaller agencies are starting from ground zero on their data governance.
This is a great segue because I think we could go on and on about all the examples and stories that we're hearing at the city level of where they are finding how they can gain those efficiencies and productivity with AI. But it really comes back down to your data. Your AI is only going to be as good as the data that it relies on. And so let's talk about some of those challenges. Actually, Becca, I want to go to you from the fire department perspective. How is your agency ensuring, to Mandy's point about how you're ensuring that accurate and real-time data for decision making?
Absolutely. Data validation is the first place my mind goes when we talk about getting real-time, accurate information. And really automating that data validation is incredibly important. So making sure that you have parameters on whatever tool you're using to collect those data, whether it's an application, whether it's user input from the public, making sure that there are parameters set such that you will not get information that is incorrect from the get-go is the fastest way to ensure you have good quality data that can be used to create accurate models. So we oftentimes have to deal with this at the fire department, and we have a really great team of in-house support that allows us to do that kind of validation from the get-go. Truly saves a lot of time with data cleansing on the back end. So I would highly recommend having those experts who can set your data to be really, honestly, a set it and forget it model.
And I think it's interesting in sort of the conversations we had in prepping this, the examples that Becca was talking about with the journey that they've been on as an organization to get to that level of maturity, where the expectation can be set, as you said, of like, we're going to sort of set it and forget it because we're going to put it in clean to begin with. And then Mandy, what you had just alluded to, where the organizations that are starting more from scratch on that data governance process, can you talk a little bit more from that perspective about how agencies can improve their data collection and their integration earlier to be able to get the benefits that Becca was talking about?
So you definitely have to start to implement your governance. Validation's important. Accessibility is extremely important. Yesterday we heard Kamal talk about data governance and talking about, she's part of the FDNY, how 20 years of data governance, data validation, and data accessibility is finally starting to pay off for the organization. Well, when I was leading the Smart City Challenge in 2017, what we were learning is our city's data was just not really organized. It wasn't accessible. And so we had to start somewhere. So we actually started with our third-party managed data. They already had schemas. They had established governance. We had some access, but what we found in our contracts was we didn't really own or control our data. So making sure you own or at least control your data and how you want to use it and process it is extremely important. And I think number two, many cities, almost every city I know of, has a 311 system. Set up your entry protocols. It's often it's coming in through an app or it's coming in through a phone call, and everybody's dispatcher, Bob, Sunil, Laura, are all entering it different ways. Specifically, like Northwest Street is being in the intersection of High Street, it's being entered 6 different ways. Drop-down menus are your friend for this type of thing to help organize your information. But setting up entry protocols and actually enforcing them and cleaning your data early is extremely important, because you're not going to get the full insights of where your flooding complaints are, where your traffic crash challenges are, although we get some of that data from other locations. But you're going to get pretty good insights into your data, but you're going to get complete and whole insights if your data is really well governed, well organized, accessible, and as I learned today, more validated.
Amazing. So Doug, from your perspective as well, working with all kinds of different organizations, what are you seeing as some of the best practices that you all recommend that cities do to prepare their data infrastructure for AI?
Yeah, and I think what Mandy brought up about third-party and first-party data is really an important part of this, both in terms of how you are categorizing your data, the sources they're coming from, and understanding what is in them, right? These are still foundational problems that a lot of agencies are dealing with. Certainly when I worked in the public sector, we were working through these challenges all the time. And I think what we're finding is that from a governance standpoint, you have to be real thoughtful up front about what those policies look like, who has access to what data. Different departments within the agency are going to have different files, different information that they want to work with. It's important both for the accuracy of the information, but also so that people are accessing the correct data and getting answers back from these generative AI assistants that are most relevant and appropriate for their roles. So in addition to the governance and the standards, there needs to be a real commitment to hygiene in the organization, to ensuring that those sorts of files and repositories and data sources are getting up to date. People are making the right decisions about how things are categorized when they create a new file, whether that be something simple like an Excel file or something more complicated. And those decisions that you make up front on how to categorize it, and those decisions you make every day about how to keep the hygiene good as you go, are really, really foundationally important for AI. And I think people need to have that conversation. You don't even need to be fully implementing the AI in order to do that. These are organizations that want to have that level of fidelity and accuracy within their data security models up front anyway, and this is an opportunity and a call to say, now's the moment to make sure you have that in order.
That's great, thank you. And so I think, while the data aspect is hugely important, we can't have the correct AI that we need if we don't have good data. AI adoption requires more than just good technology. There's a human element in all of this. And so thinking about how, as a city, are you going to engage with your employees and your leadership to help them be ready to embrace AI, to see the benefits that it can bring, and change the way that we're working. You know, you think about with Microsoft tools, some of us have been using those for decades. When you think about how old some of us are in this room with Word and Excel and whatnot, we've got some real sort of muscles that are ingrained in how I do that work every day. So now I'm going to bring Copilot in, and I got to rethink how I've been doing this stuff for decades. I worked with a transportation organization in Texas, and their CIO was really skeptical about, okay, AI, people are asking for it, we'll implement it, but I don't know if it's really going to be that beneficial. And so we talked with her about how are you going to get your organization ready? Because you could get it, and yeah, it might just sit there. People aren't going to engage with it properly, but we've got to explain the benefits. We've got to explain how and where it can fit into their day-to-day work. We've got to do coaching sessions. We've got to do prompt-a-thon, so you can figure out the right way to write a prompt that's really beneficial. So we walked through how can we prepare your organization to adopt this, and we measured it. We measured how much productivity they were experiencing before, during, and after that pilot we did. Self-reported, they were saying they were saving 12 hours per person per week. And productivity savings because we did that kind of organizational readiness. So it does matter. So Doug, can you talk a little bit more about strategies that you're seeing are really helping government teams build that trust and that confidence in these AI tools?
Yeah, I think a lot of times when we implement these kinds of programs, the best advocates and the ones that are most trustworthy in the employee community are their peers. And so we've seen as a pattern of success over and over again when there are those kind of internal centers of excellence and communities of practice where people are able to share what they've learned with each other, share what hasn't worked as well, and be able to take that along on an incremental process to the rest of the organization. That is really, really important because they know the use cases, they understand what the day-to-day work is like, they're on the front lines of doing that work together, and so having that internal community of peers to share knowledge has been a real indicator of success for us. And you also need it from the top down too, though, in the sense that you often need to be incentivized to change. It's a change management question, it's not just a technology change question. And so when we have those types of incentives and permission structures that come from the leadership in order to go ahead, use these tools, we want you to do it, engage with those communities of practice, you take those two things together and it makes a real big difference in the success we've seen in various implementations.
Great. Becca, I want to get your perspective as well, because I think especially when you've got that involvement of public safety and the expectation, how are you balancing sort of that human and machine together and those kinds of processes?
Absolutely. So I think the most important piece of adding these newer technologies into emergency services is that there should always be a human in the loop. This is not something where I would ever have an independent AI system making determinations. So really, the people who are trained, who have seen these emergencies, they have that awareness and that knowledge to address these circumstances as they arise. Having that being aided by an AI agent or an AI tool would be beneficial because it allows them to get to a more quick response perhaps, or maybe there's an additional factor that they didn't pick up in the first instance, or the first time they heard a caller speak, let's say. But at the same time, they should always be allowed to make that determination as the true experts who are taking these calls every day, who are working with these incidents every day. So definitely human in the loop is an essential part of AI for emergency services.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, especially giving the confidence to folks when it's those true kind of life or death types of situations, that you've got that experience, you've got somebody that's there ready to apply that, to listen, to help, but they can do it more effectively with the information that brings them so quickly. Mandy, you have had a long history in working with smart city initiatives. You're part of the Smart Columbus a number of years ago, and so I always love hearing the stories that you tell about the lessons learned from your experience and figuring out just navigating smart city initiatives. So as you've then seen the role of AI increasing in those, can you share a little bit of those lessons learned about that adoption, the resistance, the good, how we've overcome some of that so folks really can embrace the opportunity that AI is bringing?
Absolutely. So I had the privilege of leading the USDOT Smart City Challenge, of which Accenture was a key partner. And the first thing I did when I walked in and took over the program in 2017 was, I'm joining a technology program. I was talking about connected automated vehicles this. I was talking about apps and maps that. I was talking about the tech. And it was about the people. We really had to reposition the conversation. I had to reposition it in my head that we were talking about the people we were going to serve and think about what solutions were going to be needed to serve them in a different way. The program was largely mobility focused, although it was also data centric. And so when we started talking about outcomes and impact and how we were going to serve the residents with these technologies, as opposed to talking about the tech and the refresh speed and all the widgets, the tech talk that people get into, we caught the attentions of leadership. Our leadership was like, okay, this is going to be transformational. How can we help? How can we get engaged? How can we leverage this technology to serve our constituencies? How do you think it's going to change their life? Are there barriers? Are they getting out? And so when you start to talk about the people you serve, and I think we're still a little bit in the rah-rah phase of AI, where I'm still hearing a lot of tech talk, although here, I feel like a lot of people have really focused on the outcomes, then you start to get momentum, you get support. And I think as we continue through this journey, when we provide very real examples that that you've provided, that Becca has provided, and that you've also given Jen, I think that's how we make the transformations. You all are doing business with cities, you're from cities, there's 1,000 priorities. It used to be you were doing police, fire, and maintaining the infrastructure. Now you're trying to solve a drug crisis, the homeless crisis, food insecurity, and all of society's ailments. And so when we start to talk about AI, is there a way for us to talk about it with leadership that says, okay, we can come in, we can work with your data, and we can provide more and better specific insights into your homeless population, into your drug users, into your affordable housing crisis, that allows us to solve some of the micro challenges, the nuances of those bigger crises, so that we can really make targeted investments and make specific solutions that actually will start to move the needle, because we can only continue to study this and talk about it for so long. AI gives us the ability to take action.
Amazing. We are out of time. I feel like we could have kept talking. That was a very fast 30 minutes. So I hope from our session today that you were able to get some real tactical examples of how cities aren't just thinking about AI, but they're actually applying it and getting the real measured benefits to their productivity, to their efficiency from a city operations perspective. That's one of the takeaways I really wanted to make sure that we had, was this is, again, is not an idea that we're working towards. It is something that is here and now, and the results are immediately being seen and felt in the impact. You should think about, from the conference that you've experienced yesterday and today, take these ideas back to your organization. Again, as I mentioned about AI, it is something that makes it so accessible to every one of us. It's not just, as you said, Mandy, a technology that we're thinking about. It is something that is front and center in the way that we are all working, because our expectations are increasing, our resources are constrained and continue to be so, and how can we deliver the services that are expected of our citizens? So thank you for the time today, and excited for what's next.